Aspiration is another important process within phonetics and phonology, which is required to be understood by the students of phonetics and phonology. And when we are doing some detailed or narrowed, description of sounds, we need to know that what is aspiration. So aspiration is something which is done while the voiceless sounds are taking place in the beginning of a syllable and also in the beginning of a word, right? Then phonetically, this process is something like when the noise, which is made for the construction of consonant, when that constriction is released for a specific consonant, and then before the start of the next vowel, which is voicing basically, the next vowel would be voice. So this gap, right, which is the release of the construction for consonant, and then before the start of the voicing, there is a space, right? So within this space, an additional puff of air is articulated from the larynx, right? This is basically the process which is taking place at your larynx, the sound box, and this is one type of phonation, right? We will discuss in detail in phonation, but this is something like in addition to those three processes which we already know. Like one is the position of your larynx when your larynx, vocal folds in larynx are tied together, right? And vibration is taking place. So the sound which is produced in this form of phonation is called voice sound, right? But when your vocal folds are apart, right, there is a gap allowed, the air passage is freely allowed, then that is called voicelessness, and the position is the voiceless phonation, right? But this is third possibility when it is wide apart again, but this is different than voicelessness, right? So the puff of air is coming from your larynx, and it is taking place in this gap, the gap between the constriction of the release for the consonant and then from before the start of the voicing for the next vowel. So that is called aspiration, and the air is allowed to escape freely because your vocal folds are open apart, right? So that's why that is the additional her sound is added. And let me give you examples like in words P, T, and Ki. The P, T, and K in these three words, because these three are the voiceless stops in English language. So these three are, when they are occurring in the beginning of a word, right, they are supposed to be aspirated. And aspiration is when this her, the her air is added to these consonants. And in addition to these voiceless three consonants, this aspiration is also possible in affricate sound, right? Ch, right? So in some of these contexts, in English particularly, this ch might be also aspirated, right? And this is transcribed while doing some detailed transcription. This aspiration is shown as a small h, a very small h above the aspirated sound. So that's the way how it is realized in articulation, right? In English, this allophonic aspiration, allophonic, I'm using the word allophonic. Why? Because this aspiration does not actually create meaning difference. So that's why it is allophonic in English. This is, predictable in English. As I told you that these three voiceless consonants, which are stops basically, three voiceless stops, when they are taking place in the beginning of words, then they are aspirated. So this is the predictability of the allophonic rules of English. So that's very much possible in English. And this aspiration is also important for the experts of ELT, English language teaching, because when you are required to teach English to the the speakers of other languages, then you are required to put some focus on particularly these aspiration of sound, right? This process of the aspiration of sounds. So that's an important point for ELT experts as well. In some languages, this aspiration is phonemic. And luckily, Urdu is one of those languages where this aspiration is, phonemic. Like we create a difference in meaning through this aspiration. And let me tell you a few examples from Urdu, like how we are changing meaning. So one very good example is that the pal word in Urdu, pal. Pal means moment, okay? Like a moment, right? Ek pal. So this pal, when it is unaspirated, it means like moment in English, okay? Similarly, when that pal, the p is aspirated and it becomes p, right? So the word is changed. It becomes pal, right? So pal is basically fruit, right? So pal moment, and pal fruit. So that's a difference which is made in Urdu. And in Urdu, this simply means that in Urdu, this aspiration is phonemic, right? And one more example I can give you is the word bal. So bal is basically the twist, right? Bal dena, twist, to put twist, right? Or to twist, right? And bal also means like the whole, right? So bal, but when the first b, when it is aspirated in Urdu, it becomes bal, right? So bal is a particular sort of cleansing or cleaning, right? So that is like bal safai in Urdu. So this difference of aspiration is very much phonemic in Urdu, and that's an important point, that we should know that how it is allophonic and then when it is phonemic, right? There are few more examples from English: pill, till, and kill, right? So the p, t, and k in these three words, the initial sounds, these are aspirated, and you can see that how this h, the h is placed there on these three words, and that's the transcription of aspiration on these words.